That child isn't mine. Billionaire kicked her out. But 3 years later, the truth shattered him. Hi, my wonderful friends. Welcome to Mr. William Chronicles, where powerful stories reveal life's deepest truths. If you're new here, show some love and hit that subscribe button. Let me speak this little prayer over you. May your strength be forged in the fires you were forced to walk through, and may your heart remain open enough to recognize a true apology when it is earned. The papers hit the marble floor like a verdict. That child isn't mine. 5 words. That's all it took to destroy everything Naomi Fletcher had built with Grant Holloway. 5 words delivered with such venom, such disgust, that she barely recognized the man standing before her. This was the same man who had whispered promises against her skin just weeks ago. The same man who had held her face in his hands and sworn she was his future. Now he looked at her like she was filth tracked in on the bottom of his shoe. "Grant, please," her voice cracked. "Just listen to me. I have never been with anyone else. That baby is yours. I swear on my life. Your life." He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Only ice. "Your life means nothing. You're a liar. A scheming little gold digger who thought she could trap a billionaire with someone else's child." Naomi's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. 3 months pregnant. 3 months carrying a child created from love, or what she thought was love. Now that love had transformed into something monstrous. "The DNA doesn't lie, Naomi." Grant's jaw tightened. "My mother showed me everything. The test results. The doctor's confirmation. That thing inside you belongs to someone else." That thing. He called their baby a thing. Have you ever loved someone so completely that you couldn't imagine your life without them? Have you ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to watch them crush it without a second thought? That was Naomi in this moment, standing in the grand foyer of the Holloway estate, surrounded by wealth she never wanted, facing a man she no longer knew. "Get out. Grant, if you would just." "I said get out." His voice echoed off the cathedral ceilings. 2 security guards appeared from nowhere, flanking her like she was a criminal. "Take her things and throw them outside. She has 10 minutes to disappear, or I'm calling the police." "You can't do this." Tears streamed down her face now. Dignity abandoned. Pride forgotten. "I love you. This is your child. Your mother is lying to you. She's been against us from the start. Please, Grant. Please just look at me." For one moment, one flickering heartbeat, something passed across his face. Doubt. Memory. The ghost of what they'd shared. Then it vanished. "I never want to see you again." The guards grabbed her arms. Not roughly, but firmly enough to make clear this wasn't a negotiation. Naomi struggled, reaching for him, calling his name as they pulled her toward the massive front doors. "Grant. Grant, please. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to your child." The doors opened to reveal a cold Boston evening. October wind cut through her thin dress. She had nothing. No coat. No purse. Her belongings were being tossed onto the circular driveway like garbage, clothes, books, the small jewelry box her mother left her. The doors slammed shut behind her. And just like that, Naomi Fletcher became homeless, pregnant, alone, discarded by the only man she had ever loved because of a lie she couldn't disprove. She collapsed onto the cold stone steps, her body shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deeper than grief. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was annihilation. But here's what Grant Holloway didn't know. The DNA test was fake. Every word his mother told him was a calculated lie designed to destroy the woman he loved. And 3 years later, the truth will finally come out in a very shocking way. The truth wouldn't just set Naomi free. It would shatter him completely. Before we go back to where this love story began and how it turned so toxic, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Because the twists in this story, you won't see them coming. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? And if you're already invested, smash that like button. Now, let's rewind to the beginning. 6 months before that cold October night, Naomi Fletcher had everything figured out. She was 23 years old, fresh out of culinary school, and hungry to prove herself. When the opportunity came to work as a junior cook at the Holloway estate, she grabbed it with both hands. The pay was generous, the kitchen was world-class, and the experience would look incredible on her resume. What she didn't plan for was Grant Holloway. The Holloway family was Boston royalty, old money built on a shipping empire that had survived wars, recessions, and scandals. Their estate sat on 12 acres of manicured perfection, a stone mansion with more rooms than Naomi could count and staff who moved like ghosts, seen but never heard. Grant was the sole heir to all of it. 30 years old, sharp jaw, serious eyes that carried the weight of expectations he never asked for. Every society page painted him as cold, calculating, the kind of man who valued profit margins over people. Naomi believed every word, until the night the power went out. It happened in late April, during one of those spring storms that reminded Boston it wasn't summer yet. Lightning cracked the sky, and the entire estate plunged into darkness. The head chef had gone home early. The kitchen staff had retreated to their quarters. Only Naomi remained, determined to finish prepping for the next day's breakfast service. She found candles in the pantry and arranged them across the counter, their flickering light casting dancing shadows on the walls. With nothing else to do, she started cooking a simple pasta dish, something her grandmother used to make when the world felt too heavy. She was humming to herself when she heard footsteps. Grant Holloway appeared in the doorway, looking nothing like the intimidating heir she'd seen from a distance. His hair was disheveled, his dress shirt was untucked, and his expression wasn't cold at all, it was almost boyish. Lost. Something smells incredible. His voice startled her. She nearly dropped the wooden spoon. Mr. Holloway, I'm sorry, I didn't realize anyone was. I can leave if you need the kitchen. Please don't. He stepped further into the candlelight. I came down looking for something to eat. The backup generators are focused on essential systems, which apparently doesn't include the refrigerators in the main house. Naomi didn't know what to say. In 3 weeks of working at the estate, she had never spoken directly to him. Staff weren't supposed to engage with family unless addressed first. But here he was, standing in her kitchen like a regular person seeking a midnight snack. I could make you a plate, she offered. It's nothing fancy. Just pasta with garlic and herbs. Nothing fancy sounds perfect. She fixed him a bowl and slid it across the counter. He took a bite, and something shifted in his face. The tension in his shoulders loosened. The hard lines around his mouth softened. This is the best thing I've eaten in months, he said. Naomi laughed. Your estate has a Michelin-trained head chef. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure it is. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. What's your name? Naomi. Naomi Fletcher. Well, Naomi Fletcher, do you have somewhere to be? Or would you mind keeping me company until the lights come back on? She should have said no. Every rule, every boundary, every ounce of common sense told her to excuse herself and disappear. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, a hunger for connection that had nothing to do with the pasta. I suppose I could stay for a little while. They talked until dawn. He told her about the pressure of being the only heir, the mother who controlled every aspect of his life, the parade of suitable women she pushed on him, heiresses and socialites who saw his last name before they ever saw him. Naomi told him about growing up with nothing, working double shifts to pay for culinary school, losing her mother 2 years ago, and feeling like she'd been untethered from the world ever since. By the time sunlight crept through the kitchen windows, something had shifted between them, something neither of them could name, but both of them felt. I should go, Grant said, though he made no move to leave. You should, Naomi agreed, though she didn't want him to. He reached across the counter and touched her hand. Just briefly. Just enough to send electricity up her arm. Can I see you again? Not here. Not like this. Somewhere we can just be. She knew it was dangerous. She knew his world and her world were never meant to collide. But when he looked at her like that, like she was the first real thing he'd seen in years, she couldn't say no. The garden house, she whispered. Tomorrow night, after everyone's asleep. That was their beginning. For 3 months, they existed in stolen moments. Secret meetings in the garden house where the moonlight made everything feel like a dream. Whispered conversations that stretched past midnight. The slow unraveling of two people who had been lonely for so long they'd forgotten what connection felt like. Grant was different when they were alone. The coldness the world saw was armor, and with Naomi, he took it off piece by piece. He laughed freely. He spoke openly. He held her like she was precious, like she was the only thing in his life that was truly his. "You're the first person who sees me," he told her one night, his forehead pressed against hers. "Not the air, not the money, just me." "That's all I've ever seen," she replied. He promised her everything. A future together. A life beyond the estate walls. Marriage, once he figured out how to break free from his mother's grip. Naomi believed every word. Then she missed her period. The pregnancy test confirmed what she already knew. She was carrying Grant Holloway's child. Fear and joy tangled inside her, impossible to separate. This wasn't planned. This wasn't convenient. But it was real. And when she told Grant, trembling in the garden house, his reaction erased every doubt. He pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. "We're going to be a family," he whispered against her hair. "I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what my mother thinks. You and this baby are my future now." For one perfect week, Naomi lived inside that promise. She imagined a life where love was enough, where a billionaire's son could choose a cook's daughter, and the world would simply accept it. But she forgot one crucial thing. Dolores Holloway never accepted anything she couldn't control. And she had been watching from the shadows all along. Now, what Dolores did next will make your blood boil. But before we get there, if you're enjoying this story, tap that like button real quick and hit the subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Dolores Holloway didn't sleep the night she discovered her son's affair with the help. She sat in her private study, surrounded by mahogany panels and century-old family portraits, nursing a glass of wine that had gone warm in her hand. The news had come from Margaret, one of the housekeepers, whispered gossip about late-night meetings in the garden house, about the way Grant looked at the new cook, about love. Love. The word tasted like ash in Dolores's mouth. She had spent 30 years building the Holloway legacy after her husband's death. 30 years protecting the family name from scandal, from weakness, from anyone who might dilute their bloodline with common ambition. She had handpicked suitable matches for Grant, daughters of senators, heiresses to industrial fortunes, women who understood that marriage at their level was a merger, not a fairy tale. And now her son was sneaking around with a 23-year-old cook who probably saw dollar signs every time she looked at him. Dolores wasn't cruel. She was practical. People like Naomi Fletcher didn't belong in their world. They came from nothing, understood nothing about the weight of legacy, the responsibility of wealth. They were temporary distractions that men confused with love until reality set in and resentment poisoned everything. Dolores had seen it before. Her own husband had strayed once. A brief infatuation with a gallery curator who thought proximity to money made her equal to it. That woman had learned quickly that wanting something and deserving it were entirely different things. Grant would learn the same lesson. Dolores would make sure of it. When Margaret mentioned the pregnancy 3 weeks later, Dolores didn't react. She simply set down her teacup and asked one question. "How far along?" "About 3 months, ma'am." She told Mr. Grant last night. "I heard them in the garden house." He was happy about it. Happy. Her son was happy about destroying his future. Dolores spent the next 2 days making phone calls. Discreet inquiries to people who owed her favors. Money changed hands quietly, always in cash, always untraceable. By the end of the week, she had everything she needed. A falsified DNA test from a laboratory that had lost its license 6 months prior, but whose paperwork still looked legitimate. A doctor's signature, forged but convincing. Results that claimed Grant Holloway could not possibly be the father of Naomi Fletcher's child. The evidence was perfect, damning, absolutely false. Dolores presented the documents to Grant on a Tuesday morning while he was reviewing shipping contracts in his office. She didn't ease into it. She simply placed the papers on his desk and watched his face transform. "What is this?" His voice was tight, controlled, the way she taught him to be. "The truth about your cook." Dolores kept her tone gentle, maternal. "I had suspicions, so I hired an investigator. She's been seeing someone else, Grant. Someone from her old neighborhood. The child isn't yours." She watched him scan the papers, saw the exact moment the words registered. The DNA results, the medical letterhead, the official stamps that made lies look like facts. This can't be right. But his voice wavered. Doubt had already taken root. "I know this hurts, darling. I know you cared for her. But women like that, they see an opportunity and they take it. She thought she could trap you with another man's baby. Thank God I discovered it before you made the mistake of acknowledging paternity." Grant's jaw clenched. Dolores could see the war happening behind his eyes, love battling against evidence, instinct fighting logic. She'd raised him to trust facts over feelings, to make decisions based on proof, not passion. She'd raised him perfectly for this moment. "I want to talk to her." His words came out strangled. "Of course you do. You deserve answers." "But Grant," Dolores placed her hand over his, "don't let her manipulate you with tears. Women like her are very good at playing the victim. Hold firm to the truth." The truth. What a flexible word that was. Dolores left him with the papers and went to her room. She ordered dinner sent up. She had no appetite for watching what came next. The confrontation, the accusations, the inevitable ending. By sunset, it was done. She watched from her bedroom window as Naomi Fletcher was escorted off the property, her belongings scattered across the driveway like garbage. The girl was crying, screaming Grant's name, reaching back toward the house with desperate hands. Grant stood at the front door, rigid as stone, watching her leave. Dolores felt something that might have been relief, or satisfaction, or the cold certainty that she'd done what was necessary to protect her son from his own weakness. She turned away from the window before Naomi's car disappeared down the drive. The Fletcher girl would move on eventually, find some other man to support her and her bastard child. Maybe she'd even thank Dolores someday for teaching her that climbing above your station only led to falling harder. Grant would hurt for a while. Dolores understood that. First love always left scars. But he was young, strong. He'd recover and marry someone appropriate. And in 10 years, he'd barely remember the cook's name. Everything would return to normal. Dolores poured herself another glass of wine and toasted her reflection in the darkened window. She had saved her son. She had protected the Holloway legacy. And if a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that she'd destroyed something precious, well, some prices were worth paying to maintain order in a world that constantly threatened to descend into chaos. 3 years later, that certainty would crack like ice under pressure. But tonight, Dolores Holloway slept soundly, believing she'd won. The first 6 months were survival. Naomi Fletcher learned what rock bottom felt like, and discovered she was stronger than rock bottom expected. She found a women's shelter 3 blocks from the bus station. The room was 8 by 10 feet, shared with 2 other women and their children. The walls were thin. The heat was inconsistent. But it was safe. And safety, Naomi learned, was worth more than comfort. She picked up catering gigs through a community job board. Small events at first, birthday parties in cramped apartments, baby showers in church basements. She worked with whatever equipment she could borrow, creating meals that made people close their eyes and sigh with satisfaction despite the humble surroundings. Her reputation grew slowly. Word of mouth in neighborhoods that couldn't afford fancy caterers, but still wanted their celebrations to feel special. Naomi became the woman who made magic happen on impossible budgets. When Theo was born, 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect fury, Naomi held her son and made him a promise. "You will never feel like you're not enough. You will never know hunger or cold or fear. I will build us a life, and it will be ours. No one will ever take it away." Theo squirmed in her arms, opened his eyes, and looked directly at her like he understood every word. The second year, Naomi saved enough to rent a tiny apartment. 1 bedroom. A kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to stand in. But it was theirs. She set up a business license, Naomi's Kitchen, and started taking bigger jobs. Corporate lunches, wedding receptions, charity galas for organizations that couldn't afford the high-end caterers but wanted quality food. Naomi delivered every single time. She worked while Theo slept, prepped vegetables at 3 a.m. while he dozed in a playpen next to her makeshift prep station, perfected recipes while he napped, keeping one ear always tuned to his breathing. Being a single mother and business owner meant she never stopped moving. But Naomi had learned something important in those early desperate months. She was capable of far more than she'd ever imagined. By the 3rd year, Naomi's Kitchen had 12 regular corporate clients and a waiting list for event bookings. She hired 2 part-time assistants, moved into a bigger apartment with an actual bedroom for Theo, started saving money, real money, not just enough to survive, but enough to build something lasting. And then she won the Regional Culinary Excellence Award. It wasn't the Michelin star or James Beard recognition. It was a modest honor from the New England Catering Association, acknowledging innovation, community impact, and business growth. Most people had never heard of it. But to Naomi, standing on that stage in a dress borrowed from her neighbor, holding Theo's hand while accepting the award, it meant everything. It meant she'd built something real from nothing. It meant Grant Holloway and his mother hadn't destroyed her. It meant Theo would grow up watching his mother refuse to stay broken. The local news covered the ceremony, a feel-good segment about a single mother overcoming adversity to build a successful catering business. 3 minutes of airtime that changed everything. The reporter asked about her inspiration. Naomi looked down at Theo, who was fidgeting with her dress hem and trying to wave at the camera, and felt her throat tighten. "My son is my inspiration," she said simply. "He deserves a mother who doesn't give up, who shows him that your circumstances don't define your future, that you can start with nothing and build something beautiful if you're willing to work for it." The reporter smiled. Any advice for other single mothers struggling to make ends meet? Naomi thought about the nights she'd cried herself to sleep in the shelter, the time she'd stood in her tiny kitchen wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake thinking she could do this alone, the moments she'd felt so tired she thought her body might simply give up. "Don't wait for someone to save you," she said. "Save yourself. It's harder. It takes longer. But when you build your own life, no one can take it away from you." The segment aired on a Tuesday morning during the breakfast news hour. In a mansion across the city, Grant Holloway sat at his mother's dining table, coffee going cold in his cup, watching a woman he destroyed accept an award with grace and strength that made his chest ache. And beside her stood a little boy with Grant's exact nose, his mother's chin, eyes that belonged to 3 generations of Holloways. Grant's fork clattered against his plate. "Turn that off," Dolores commanded, but Grant couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stare at the child who looked exactly like him. That was his son. He knew it with the same certainty he'd once felt about loving Naomi, the same instinct his mother had trained him to ignore. The DNA test had been a lie, and for 3 years he'd believed it. If you felt that jolt of recognition right alongside Grant, imagining what Grant must be feeling, then you're as invested in this as I am. Show me you're with them on this journey. Tap that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the moment everything shatters. The truth is coming, and you won't want to look away. Grant Holloway didn't go to work that day. He sat in his study with the television frozen on Naomi's face, rewinding the segment over and over. Each time, his eyes went to the boy, Theo. The reporter had mentioned his name, Theo Fletcher. Should have been Theo Holloway. Grant's hands shook as he pulled out his phone and started searching. Within an hour, he'd found Naomi's business website. Social media profiles kept deliberately private, but with enough public photos to confirm what he already knew. That child was his. The resemblance wasn't subtle. It was undeniable. Theo had Grant's strong jawline, the distinctive Holloway family eyes, hazel with gold flecks, that appeared in sunlight. Even the way the boy smiled in one candid photo, slightly crooked on the left side, was identical to Grant's childhood pictures. 3 years. He'd missed 3 years of his son's life because he'd trusted a piece of paper over the woman he loved. Grant's stomach turned. He ran to the bathroom and vomited until nothing was left but bile and shame. When he finally composed himself, he went looking for answers. Real answers. The medical office where the DNA test supposedly originated no longer existed. The building had been converted into a yoga studio 2 years ago. Grant hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Marcus Chun, and gave him one instruction: find out if that paternity test was real. Marcus called back in 48 hours. The laboratory lost its license for falsifying results in custody cases about 3 months before your test was supposedly conducted. The doctor who signed off on your paperwork, he doesn't exist. The signature is forged. I compared it to other documents from that lab. Someone paid good money to make this look legitimate. Grant's vision blurred. How much would something like that cost? Depends on who you know. If you've got the right connections and enough cash, maybe $50,000. Could be more. $50,000 to destroy a family. Grant knew exactly who had those connections, who had that money, who had the motivation. He found his mother in her parlor, arranging flowers like it was any other Tuesday. She looked up when he entered, and for just a moment, one flickering second, something like fear crossed her face. Grant, you didn't go to the office today. Are you feeling ill? He placed his phone on the table between them. On the screen was the frozen image of Theo from the news segment. That's my son. Dolores's hands stilled on the roses. Grant, don't. His voice came out cold. Dead. Don't you dare lie to me again. I hired an investigator. The lab that processed my DNA test, it had already lost its license for falsifying results. The doctor who signed the paperwork doesn't exist. Someone paid to make that test look real. His mother's face remained composed, but her fingers tightened on the flower stems. You don't understand what I was protecting you from. Protecting me? Grant's laugh was bitter. You destroyed my family. You made me throw out the woman I loved while she was carrying my child. You cost me 3 years with my son. What part of that was protection? Dolores set down the flowers with deliberate care. When she spoke, her voice carried the steel that had held the Holloway empire together through decades of challenges. That girl was not suitable for this family. She came from nothing. She understood nothing about legacy, about responsibility, about what it means to carry our name. She would have been a stain on everything we've built. She's the mother of my child. Grant's control shattered. She's the woman I loved, and you made me believe she betrayed me. You fabricated evidence. You paid people to lie. You are not the protector of this family. You're the poison destroying it from the inside. I will not apologize for doing what was necessary. Dolores stood, drawing herself to full height. You were infatuated, blinded by a pretty face and convenient affection. I saved you from making a catastrophic mistake that would have haunted this family for generations. Grant stared at the woman who raised him and saw a stranger. Someone so consumed by control and status that she'd sacrificed his happiness, his child, without hesitation. I'm going to find her, he said quietly. I'm going to beg her forgiveness. And, if she'll allow it, I'm going to be a father to my son. Dolores's expression hardened. If you bring that woman back into this family, I will cut you off completely. The trust funds, your position in the company, everything you've built here. You'll have nothing. Then I'll have nothing. Grant felt lighter than he had in years. Because the alternative is having you. And that's worse than poverty. He walked out of his mother's parlor and didn't look back. 3 years ago, he'd chosen his mother's lies over Naomi's truth. He'd chosen status over love. He'd chosen cowardice over courage. He couldn't undo those choices. Couldn't give Naomi back the years she'd struggled alone. Couldn't give Theo back the father he should have had from birth. But he could stop making the same mistake. Grant Holloway spent the next week tracking down Naomi's address, rehearsing apologies that would never be enough, and preparing himself for the very real possibility that she'd refuse to ever speak to him again. He deserved that refusal, deserved her anger and contempt and every door slammed in his face. But he had to try. Not for himself. Not for some fantasy of rebuilding what they'd lost. For Theo. Because his son deserved a father. And Grant was going to spend the rest of his life proving he could be the man he should have been 3 years ago. The truth is out. Now comes the consequences. If you're ready for the fallout, like this video and subscribe. It will be really appreciated. Naomi opened the door to find Grant Holloway standing on her doorstep, and every cell in her body screamed to slam it in his face. 3 years. 3 years of struggling alone, of late nights wondering if she'd made the right choices, of explaining to Theo that some daddies just weren't around. And now here he was, looking like he'd been through hell, holding flowers like they could somehow bridge the gap between then and now. Naomi. His voice cracked on her name. Please. Just 5 minutes. If you never want to see me again after that, I'll disappear. But I need to explain. Explain what? The words came out sharp. Cold. How you threw me out pregnant. How you believed a fake DNA test over 3 years of loyalty. How you chose your mother's poison over me. Grant flinched. I know. I know I don't deserve. You don't deserve anything from me. Naomi's hand tightened on the doorframe. You had your chance to believe me. You had your chance to fight for us. You chose money and status instead. I chose wrong. Grant's eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. The DNA test was falsified. My mother paid people to fabricate evidence. I hired an investigator. I have proof now. That boy I saw on TV, Theo, he's mine. I can see it. And I've spent 3 years destroying myself over what I did to you. Naomi felt something crack inside her chest, but she didn't let it show. So you found out the truth, and now you want what? Forgiveness? A relationship with your son? To play happy family? I want a chance to be his father. Grant's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Not to fix us. Not to erase what I did. I know that's impossible. But Theo deserves to know his dad. And I'll do whatever you require. Supervised visits. Background checks. Anything. Just please don't punish him because of my mistakes. The mention of Theo shifted something in Naomi's resolve. She looked at Grant, really looked at him, and saw genuine anguish. This wasn't the cold man who'd thrown her out. This was someone broken, carrying 3 years of regret. But regret didn't erase pain. If I let you into his life, Naomi said slowly, it's on my terms. You show up when you say you will. You follow every boundary I set. And the second you disappoint him, the second you make him feel like he's not wanted, you're gone forever. Understand? I understand. Grant nodded rapidly. Thank you. God, Naomi, thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because every child deserves a father if that father is willing to be present. She let him in. Not into her heart, but into the small living room where Theo was building an elaborate tower with blocks. Her son looked up, saw the stranger, and immediately went shy, pressing against Naomi's leg. Theo, baby, this is Grant. He's someone who wants to meet you. Grant knelt down slowly, making himself small and unthreatening. Hi, Theo. Your tower looks amazing. I used to build block towers when I was your age too. Theo studied him with the serious expression of a 3-year-old sizing up a new person. Mine's going to be taller than the refrigerator. That's pretty ambitious. Grant smiled, and Naomi's breath caught, because Theo smiled back the exact same way. Can I help? The first visit lasted 30 minutes. Grant followed Theo's lead, building blocks and asking questions, and never pushing for more than the boy was willing to give. When it was time to leave, he thanked Naomi again and left without asking when he could return. She called him 3 days later. Saturday. 2 hours. The park near my apartment. Grant showed up 15 minutes early. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Twice weekly visits that gradually extended as Theo grew comfortable. Grant never missed one. Never showed up late. Never made promises he couldn't keep. Naomi watched from careful distance as father and son built a relationship one careful moment at a time. Grant taught Theo how to throw a baseball, badly at first, but they laughed about it together. They made up silly songs about dinosaurs. They had serious conversations about whether superheroes could be real. Theo started calling him Dad after 2 months. The first time it happened, Grant's eyes filled with tears, and he had to turn away to compose himself. "Are you okay, Dad?" Theo asked, confused. "Yeah, buddy. I'm just really happy." Naomi felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. This wasn't the man who'd abandoned her. This was someone who'd learned, who'd grown, who showed up for his son with a consistency that meant everything. But forgiving him, truly forgiving him, felt like betraying the woman who'd survived those 3 years alone. 6 months into supervised visits, Grant asked if Theo could spend a weekend at his apartment. Naomi's first instinct was to refuse. But Theo was bouncing with excitement, and Grant had proven himself reliable. "One night," she said, "and you call me if anything goes wrong." That Saturday night, Naomi sat alone in her apartment and realized how quiet it was without Theo's laughter. She checked her phone obsessively, waiting for disaster that never came. Sunday morning, Theo returned full of stories about pancakes for breakfast and a movie marathon and the blanket fort that stayed up all night. "Dad said next time we can make pizza from scratch." Theo's face glowed with happiness that made Naomi's chest ache. After Theo ran off to play, Grant lingered at the door. "Thank you for trusting me with him," he said quietly. "I know how hard that must have been." Naomi looked at him, this man who'd shattered her 3 years ago, and felt something shift. Not love. Not yet. Maybe never again. But something softer than anger. "You're being a good father to him," she admitted. "That's all I wanted. Can I ask you something?" Grant hesitated. "Do you think, someday, you might be able to forgive me? Not forget. I know I don't deserve that. But maybe forgive enough that we can be friends?" For Theo. Naomi considered the question. The honest answer was complicated. "I don't know," she said finally. "You hurt me in ways I'm still healing from. But you're showing up for Theo. And maybe that's enough for now." It wasn't the answer Grant wanted. She could see the disappointment flash across his face. But he nodded and accepted it. Because he'd learned something in 3 years of consequences. Sometimes you don't get what you want. Sometimes you have to earn forgiveness inch by painful inch, knowing you might never fully receive it. And sometimes that's exactly what you deserve. 1 year after Grant re-entered their lives, Theo Holloway was the happiest 4-year-old in Boston. He had his mom, who made the best grilled cheese sandwiches and read him stories in funny voices. He had his dad, who taught him how to ride a bike and built elaborate Lego cities with him on weekends. And he had 2 homes where he felt loved and safe. Grant and Naomi had settled into an easy co-parenting rhythm. Not romantic, Naomi had made that clear, but functional. Friendly even. They could share coffee while Theo played, discuss his preschool progress without tension, coordinate schedules without old resentments poisoning every interaction. For the first time since that terrible October night 3 years ago, something like peace had settled over all of them. Dolores Holloway watched this peace with growing rage. She'd lost control of her son. Grant barely spoke to her anymore, communicating only through lawyers about business matters. He'd moved out of the family estate into a modest townhouse near Naomi's apartment. He'd restructured his finances so Dolores couldn't threaten him with disinheritance anymore. Worst of all, he was happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way she'd never seen before. All because of that woman and her child. Dolores had tried reasoning, tried guilt, tried reminding Grant of his responsibilities to the Holloway legacy. Nothing worked. He was lost to her, seduced by the fantasy of playing house with someone beneath their station. If reason wouldn't bring him back, perhaps tragedy would. The plan was simple, elegant even. Remove the boy. Not permanently. Dolores wasn't a monster. Just long enough to prove that Naomi couldn't protect what mattered most. Long enough to shatter the illusion of their little family. Long enough for Grant to see that involving himself with common people brought common dangers. She hired professionals. Not thugs, but experienced men who specialized in discreet operations. Former military, The kind who asked few questions when the money was right. Their instructions were clear. Take the child after school. Keep him safe and comfortable. Wait for further instructions. It happened on a Tuesday. Theo's preschool had a strict pickup protocol. Only authorized adults could collect children. Naomi was always on time, 3:15 p.m., never late. Except that Tuesday, Naomi's catering van broke down on the highway. She called Grant in a panic, and he raced from his office to the school, arriving at 3:22 p.m., 7 minutes late. In those 7 minutes, two men in a maintenance van approached Theo's teacher in the parking lot. They had identification, a story about a family emergency, official-looking paperwork that claimed they were authorized to collect Theodore Fletcher on behalf of his mother. The teacher, flustered and concerned, double-checked the pickup list. She didn't see their names, but the paperwork looked legitimate, and the men knew Theo's full name, his mother's name, even his favorite cartoon character. "Is my mom okay?" Theo asked, his small face worried. "She's fine, buddy. She just asked us to bring you to her. She's at the hospital. Your grandma fell and hurt herself." Theo didn't have a grandma, not one he knew about. But he was 4 years old and scared, and these men seemed nice, and they said his mom needed him. He got in the van. When Grant arrived moments later, the teacher met him with a confused expression. "Mr. Holloway, I wasn't expecting you. Theo's mother already sent someone to pick him up about 5 minutes ago." Grant's blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" "Naomi's van broke down, that's why I'm here." The teacher's face went pale as she realized her mistake. Grant called Naomi. Her scream echoed through the phone, so loudly people in the parking lot turned to stare. The next 6 hours were hell on earth. Police arrived. Amber Alert issued. Security footage reviewed. The maintenance van had fake plates. The official paperwork was forged. The men had vanished completely. Naomi collapsed in Grant's arms, sobbing so hard her body shook. "They took our baby. Someone took our baby, and we don't know where he is, or if he's scared, or... We'll find him." Grant held her tight, his own tears falling into her hair. "I swear to God, Naomi will find him." But hours passed with no leads, no ransom call, no demands, just suffocating silence while their 4-year-old son was somewhere with strangers. The police worked the case, but Grant could see their expressions. The longer a child was missing, the worse the statistics became. He couldn't accept those statistics. At hour 7, Grant made a phone call to someone he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Jack Morrison, former Navy SEAL, now private security consultant. They'd served together briefly during Grant's short military stint before his mother had pulled him back to run the family business. "Jack, I need help. My son's been kidnapped, and the police have nothing. I need people who can find him. Money is no object." Jack didn't hesitate. "I'll make some calls. Give me everything you have." Within 2 hours, Jack arrived with a team of 3. Former military, all of them. They had equipment the police couldn't access. Contacts in places the police couldn't reach. Methods that weren't exactly legal, but were devastatingly effective. They tracked the van through traffic camera footage across 3 counties, found where it had been abandoned, pulled fingerprints and cross-referenced them with military databases. One of the kidnappers had a record: dishonorable discharge, known for taking discreet security jobs for wealthy clients who wanted things handled quietly. "This wasn't random," Jack said, showing Grant the file. "This was professional. Someone hired these guys specifically." Grant felt something click into place. A terrible, sickening certainty. "My mother." Naomi looked up from where she'd been sitting, arms wrapped around herself. "What? My mother did this." Grant's voice shook with rage. "She hired someone to take Theo, to punish me, to destroy what we've built." He called Dolores. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice calm. "Grant, I heard about the unfortunate situation with the child. I'm sure he'll turn up." "Where's my son?" Grant's voice was deadly quiet. "I know you did this. Where is he?" "I have no idea what you're talking about. You have 1 hour to tell me where Theo is, or I'm having you arrested for kidnapping. I have former SEALs tracking the men you hired right now. They'll find him with or without you. But if I have to wait, if my son spends one more terrified hour because of you, I will destroy you." Silence on the other end. "Then, you're choosing that woman's bastard over your own mother? That woman is the only good thing I've ever done. And that boy is my son. You've stolen enough from me. You don't get to take him too." Grant hung up and nodded to Jack. "Find them. Whatever it takes." Jack's team worked through the night. They traced payments from an offshore account linked to Dolores's financial advisor, found the safe house where the kidnappers were holding Theo, coordinated with local police for the actual raid. They wanted this legal, bulletproof. At 4:47 a.m., police breached the location. They found Theo sleeping on a couch, wrapped in a blanket, unharmed. The kidnappers surrendered without resistance, professional enough to know when a job had gone sideways. One of them talked immediately, confirming Dolores Holloway had hired them, had given specific instructions to take the boy but keep him safe, had promised this was a family matter that would be resolved quickly. Grant and Naomi arrived as police were bringing Theo out. Their son was groggy, confused, but alive, safe. Naomi fell to her knees and gathered Theo into her arms, sobbing his name over and over. Grant wrapped his arms around both of them, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, their family, whole again. But then Grant pulled away, kissed Theo's forehead, looked at Naomi with an expression she'd never seen before. Pure, cold fury. "I need to go deal with my mother." He found Dolores at the family estate, already dressed despite the early hour, sitting in her parlor like she was waiting for him. "Grant, I'm glad the boy was found safely. Don't." His voice cut through her words like a blade. "Don't you dare pretend you care about his safety. You kidnapped my son to manipulate me. You terrorized a 4-year-old child to prove a point about status and control. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to destroy the only thing I've ever loved." Grant's control finally shattered. 3 years ago, you made me throw away my family with your lies. I let you. That's on me. But this? Kidnapping Theo? That's on you. And you're going to pay for it. Police were already pulling up the driveway. Dolores's face finally showed fear. "You wouldn't." "I already did." Grant stepped aside as officers entered the parlor. "You wanted me to cut ties? Consider them cut. Forever." As they led Dolores away in handcuffs, Grant felt something break loose in his chest. Not grief. Not regret. Relief. If you've made it this far in the story, then you will be interested in what happens next. Show some love. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion. Because what comes next will restore your faith in second chances. Let's finish this. The arrest of Dolores Holloway was not a quiet affair. It was a spectacle of flashing cameras and shouted questions, a final, humiliating defeat played out on the evening news. Grant stood on the steps of the police station, his arm around a trembling Naomi, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. He had not just cut ties with his mother, he had severed her from their lives with a clean, final slice of justice. In the days that followed, a profound quiet settled over them. The constant, low-grade fear that had hummed in the background of their lives was gone, replaced by a peace so deep it felt like a physical presence. Theo, resilient as only children can be, bounced back quickly, his nightmares soothed by the certainty that both his parents were there, that the bad lady was gone for good. It was in this new peace that Grant found the courage to do what he should have done years ago. He chose the anniversary of their first midnight meal in the kitchen, the night the power went out and their souls recognized each other in the candlelight. He didn't plan an elaborate spectacle. There were no skywriters or string quartets. Instead, he recreated that night in the garden house of the estate he had long since vacated, the place where their love had been both conceived and destroyed. He lit a dozen candles. He cooked a simple pasta dish, garlic and herbs scenting the air. And he waited. When Naomi arrived, guided by a note he'd left with Theo, she stopped in the doorway, her eyes wide. She saw the candles, the simple table, the man standing nervously in the center of it all. For a moment, She was 23 again, looking at the lonely heir who had seen her, truly seen her, for the first time. "What is all this?" she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "A new beginning," Grant said, his own voice rough. "On the night our first one started." He didn't get down on one knee. He simply took her hands, his thumbs stroking her palms, and looked into the eyes of the woman he had loved, lost, and been given the miraculous chance to love again. "Naomi Fletcher," he began, "I have spent the last 3 years living with the consequences of the worst decision I will ever make. I threw away a love most people only dream of because I was blind and weak. I can never give you those years back. I can never erase the pain I caused you." He took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. "But I can spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you always believed I could be. The man who fights for you, who trusts you, who stands by you. I am not the heir to an empire anymore. I am just a man desperately in love with the strongest, most beautiful woman he has ever known, and humbly asking for the honor of being her husband. Naomi, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Naomi's face, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of overwhelming, breathtaking grace. They were the tears of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged, not just unbroken, but refined. She looked at this man, no longer a billionaire heir, but a devoted father, a humble partner, a warrior who had fought his own demons to get back to her. She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and sure. "Yes, Grant Holloway, I will marry you." He slid the simple, elegant diamond onto her finger, and when he kissed her, it felt like a seal on a promise. A promise of a future built not on old money or status, but on hard-won trust, forgiveness, and a love that had been tested in the hottest fires and had somehow emerged stronger. Their wedding was small and intimate, held in the very garden where they had stolen their first secret moments. Theo, beaming with pride, served as the ring-bearer, clutching the velvet pillows like they held the greatest treasure in the world. When he handed the rings over, he grinned up at his parents, as if he had personally orchestrated the entire happy ending. As Naomi said, "I do," looking into Grant's eyes, she knew this vow was different. It wasn't a naive promise made in the dark. It was a conscious choice, made in the bright light of all they had survived, to build a life together from the ashes of their past. Years later, on a quiet Sunday morning, sunlight streamed into the kitchen of their comfortable home. Theo, now a lively 7-year-old, was chattering about a school project while Grant flipped pancakes. The air was filled with the simple, profound music of a family at peace. Naomi stood at the counter, watching them, her heart so full she thought it might burst. She reached for Grant's hand, pulling him away from the stove for a moment. She looked into his eyes, a soft, secret smile playing on her lips. "What is it?" he asked, his voice warm with love. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she gently took his hand and pressed it against her stomach, where a gentle, firm swell had begun to bloom. Grant's eyes widened. The spatula he was holding clattered onto the counter. He looked from her smiling face down to his hand, pressed against the life growing within her. Where there had once been only the emptiness of their separation, there was now the profound fullness of their future. "Really?" he whispered, his voice cracking with a joy so pure it was almost painful. "Really," Naomi confirmed, her own tears of happiness mirroring his. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, because she was. Theo, noticing the commotion, came running over. "What's going on?" Grant scooped his son up with one arm, holding his wife with the other. "You're going to be a big brother, Theo. Our family is growing." Theo's cheer of delight was the final piece of their healing. The Ashford name, once a symbol of cold legacy and control, now meant something entirely different. It meant love, hard-won and infinitely precious. It meant a family built on choice, not obligation. It meant a future, blooming beautifully despite everything, built on the ashes of betrayal. And that, my beautiful family, is the end of our story. If you've been with Naomi and Grant through every heartbreak and every triumph, through the betrayal and the beautiful redemption, then you understand the power of second chances. You've seen how strength can be forged in pain, and how love, real love, can rebuild what was shattered. You've made it to the very end. If this story touched your heart, show some love. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what moment moved you the most. Your support is what allows me to bring you these powerful stories. Until the next tale of love, loss, and overcoming, stay strong, believe in redemption, and never forget your own worth. Goodbye for now.